you haven't heard your team mentioned, like if you're an interested party in the Cyhawk game, let's talk about it right now. We are talking about it in the Big 12 scoreboard because that's what's first on my run sheet. But we'll lead off with you, Iowa and Iowa State. Um, Guys, once again, Iowa fails to hit their point total. Brian Ferentz is continuing to dig himself a hole. And guys, he even had help from the defense. He had a pick six today, and we couldn't get to 25 points. But Iowa does win in Ames 20-13. Any real takeaways from that game other than punting is winning and defense apparently wins championships up in Iowa?
Typical Cyhawk game. Bet the under and tune in for a lot of defense.
Yeah, heard some yodeling there. Not enough, but we heard some yodeling.
The over-under for this game was 36, and if you can do the quick calculations, we did not get there. It felt like we were going to. Iowa State was driving with a minute 30 left.
Yeah.
Didn't obviously get it in the end zone. Didn't get a score to tie it up. Big fourth down stop for Iowa there on that drive, and so we not only have an Iowa cover, we also have a under hit, which is just kind of the universe smiling down on us. Elsewhere in the Big 12, number 15, Kansas State whoops Troy. I thought this defense for the Trojans would keep them in it. Will Howard said absolutely not. 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. Say that again.
Big statement from the Wildcats. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is not just your normal group of 5 team. This is a title contender in the Sun Belt, and Kansas State's able to run away with that. Oklahoma. Guys, do we need to talk about the Sooners having a good defense again? They beat SMU 28-11. I'm not really surprised that SMU's defense was able to hold Oklahoma to such a medium point total. I am shocked that Oklahoma held SMU to 11 points.
Yeah, we saw it firsthand last week. Preston Stone is the real deal, and for Oklahoma's defense to be holding them to only 11 is a big, big statement for them. Only giving up 5.5 points per game. If you can keep that up, I think they're going to win a lot of games.
It's really, really unfortunate for Preston Stone, too. They were driving. I could smell the cover play coming. We were getting 15 in the hook, and then he just missed his running back on like a dump-off pass and throws it right to a linebacker. Not the best way to end for the Ponies there, but SMU has their eyes set on the American. I think they're going to be probably the leading group of 5 contender between them and Tulane. I think they've got a great shot. BYU blows out Southern Utah. West Virginia blows out Duquesne after they gave up the first score of the game. And folks were saying, does Neil Brown make an appearance after halftime? Cincinnati comes away with the win over Pitt. Now, we're not high on Pitt, but I told you in the preview of this Big 12 that Emory Jones could be a difference maker for Cincinnati. Now, he didn't have big stats, but early on when Cincinnati built a lead and pulled away from Pitt, he was the man leading the charge, just 125 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he did enough to get you a win on the road against the Pitt Panthers team. I'm not going to say that Cincinnati is going to make any noise, but just keep your eye on them. Just keep your eye on them. They've got a lot of games at home this season. UCF kicks a walk-off field goal over Boise State. Rice beats Houston. Trey, I know you were really pumped about this. How about the Rice Owls beating the Cougars?
Dude, JT Daniels, Luke McCaffrey and company. I wrote the preview article for our magazine this summer, so I have a little soft spot for the Owls, but a huge, huge win in the Bayou Bucket in double overtime. I thought they were going to blow Houston out at the beginning, so credit to Houston for getting back in this game, but I think they were up 14-0 or 21-0 or something like that at the beginning, and Houston comes storming back, but a really fun football game that came down to a missed 2-point conversion in double overtime.
Love to see it. You hate to see it, depending on which side you're on there. TCU blows out Nichols, and then Kansas handled Illinois quite well. Jalen Daniels is back, 277 yards in his return from injury, 2 touchdowns and a pick for the Jayhawks there. Moving over to the Conference of Champions, we've talked about USC's blowing out Stanford. That one's obviously not final. Auburn is really on the ropes right now. They're trailing 10-7, trying to drive against the Cal Bears. And Oklahoma State is leading Arizona State right now. But the finals that we haven't already talked about, Garrett Washington keeps on humming. Number 8 Washington wins 43-10 over Tulsa. Michael Penance with another gigantic game, 409 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, they got some good play up there in Washington. I got to tell you what, Michael Penix, he slangs that thing, man. He can really get the ball downfield, and I'm excited for him. I think that this is the best product we've seen in the Pac-12 in a long time, and it's nice to have a diverse group up there, right? It's nice to have a Washington, Oregon, both being competitive, USC being competitive, and maybe Utah makes a return, Colorado finally looking good. Pac-12 is a lot of fun to watch this year.
My Odunze for Biletnikoff campaign continues to gain momentum. Not only
That was a good pick.
did Odunze have 7 catches for $107 and a score, he also had a rushing touchdown today. So, however we can take him, go ahead.
Might win the Doak Walker.
So that's right. Yeah. Hey, most efficient rusher in the country. We'll take all the praise however we can get it. Mississippi State knocks off Arizona 31-24 in overtime. That was a close game. Mississippi State jumped out to an early lead. It felt like they were going to run away with it. And then Jaden Delora and the Wildcats clawed their way back, a 36-yard field goal to send it to overtime, bought the Wildcats a little extra time there in Stark Vegas, but they weren't ultimately able to win it. And then, Trey, we were completely wrong about this game. UCLA kind of boat races San Diego State. You've kind of built your presidential campaign on Power 5 teams go to G5 stadiums to die, but UCLA took control of this game early and never let San Diego State in this game.
Yeah, I guess the state of California is just exempt from this rule because Oregon State took care of business at San Jose last week, and now UCLA is taking care of business at San Diego State. So just apply that rule only outside of the state of California.
Over to the Southeastern Conference, guys, we may have a little bit of a problem. The SEC is not looking super elite right now. We've talked about A&M losing. Obviously, LSU got boat raced last week. But even when you look at like Georgia, and of course, Alabama losing earlier today as well, you look at Georgia, you look at Tennessee, LSU, even today against Grambling, all really slow starts. Like the final scores are deceiving. It was a 31 point second quarter for Georgia that, put that game away. But guys, they didn't score a point against the Cardinals in the first quarter. Does the SEC have a problem? Are we seeing a little bit of regression in what has been the true conference of champions here in college football?
Yeah,
I mean, fair.
Go ahead, Garrett. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's fair to say that. I think, if you look at some of these slow starts, I mean, what do we look up at? Like Tennessee was like 6-3 over Austin Peay for a little while there.
Yeah. No,
barely hanging on against
6-3.
Right. And like some of these teams just look like, I mean, they're stinky. They're just not good. And like, again, it's not that they're awful teams. It's not that they're the worst in the world or that they're not going to win games and that the whole SEC is going to miss a bowl game or anything like that, but they don't have the top end. And I think that's kind of what the portal is doing right now is the portal's taking from a lot of SEC rosters and moving it out of conference. Because, traditionally the SEC just stacked talent and you could kind of develop it on your roster. But now we're seeing kind of the limitations of that when you've got either really young players having to go and figure it out or, just guys that have left your roster that you thought, maybe that guy could have been a contributor and he's not there anymore. So, it's not, sky is falling. It's not, everything's terrible for the SEC. They'll still probably end up having a lot of really good teams and they'll put someone in the playoff and Georgia might win it all, right? But they got to figure some stuff out quick. The adjustments that need to get made.
They haven't lost an embarrassing game yet. I'll say that. And they've had opportunities to lose very embarrassing games, but the depth isn't there this year, I don't think. And it's going to be wide open. I think the SEC is going to be really, really fun to follow this year because it's going to be wide open. You're not really going to know has the advantage week in and week out. It's going to be impossible to bet on the SEC and going to be really, really fun to see just who emerges out of the chaos each and every week.
Yeah, Kentucky didn't put away Eastern Kentucky. That game was in doubt late. Arkansas struggled with Kent State. Missouri, it took well into the fourth quarter. I mean, that game was in doubt. That was a close game all the way through. Missouri only beats Middle Tennessee State 23-19. Florida with a slow start against McNeese. And South Carolina was tied with Furman early on in that game. They gave up 21 to the Paladins. Let's move over to the Big Ten. Listen, ho-hum for Michigan, right? 35-7 over UNLV. You guys were right on this. The under in this game was an absolute free money giveaway. Ohio State doesn't blow out Youngstown State 35-7, but they do take care of business. McCord throws a couple of touchdown passes, 160 receiving yards for Marvin Harrison Jr. He's back. We knew he wasn't going anywhere. He's an absolute stud. Penn State destroys Delaware. Drew Aller didn't have to do much, just 204 yards and a touchdown, but Penn State was able to run the football. And this offense is going to be a whole lot of fun. Now, 63 points is awesome. Can that defense step up week in, week out against the Big Ten schedule? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Purdue gets on the board. They win 24-17 over Virginia Tech. Another weird rain-delayed game. This was close all the way throughout, but Hudson Card and the boys ultimately pull it out. I hate to see that as a kind of from afar Virginia Tech fan. I was rooting for the Hokies there. They don't get that one done. Northwestern blows out UTEP. Who had that
as a
on
dog,
their
as a home dog?
They were a home dog. I think at kick it had swung to Northwestern minus a point, but when we covered it in our preview, they were a home dog. UTEP's bad, guys. UTEP's abysmal. That was a don't look at what's going on over here in Evanston. That was bad things. Trey or Garrett, do you have anything to say for your Maryland Terrapins? They really struggled with Pogie's Charlotte squad.
They won by 18. I don't know what you're talking about, man. This is fantastic.
They were down 14-0 at one point.
I'll hear nothing of it. I don't want to listen to things that make me feel worse about Maryland right now. So, no, I'm going to stick with them. Obviously, teams are allowed to have rough games. Teams are allowed to come out and not play their best. You get one.
There's their one.
You don't want to burn your bad game too early in the season, Maryland.
As we've always said about the Maryland Terrapins, they will only have one bad game.
No, I'm saying I've said this before on the podcast. If you're a team that is expected to perform well, you can have one like bad game where you barely survive, like Georgia last year against Missouri. You don't get two, and I still talk about you as a really good team. You don't get two.
Tell you what, Rutgers, my Scarlet Knights, who I wrote that preview for them, they blow away Temple to improve to 2-0 on the season. Just as we all predicted, they'd start out 2-0. Kyle Monaghay, I have to shout him out. Electric running back for Rutgers in a running back room that's deep, but no one had really separated themselves coming into the season. Then you had injuries. Monaghay has really taken a step forward. He was great last week in the opener, 165 yards on the ground this week as well. I'm just saying, there's a path to a bowl game for Rutgers, and if they get there, I will be first in line to congratulate them because, boy, I've been hoping that would be true since the offseason. ACC, real quick on this one. Florida State drubbed Southern Miss 66-13. We wondered if there would be a little bit of a hangover after that big LSU win. There was no hangover for Florida State, maybe for their fans, but not for the football team. Duke beats Lafayette in a no-doubter. Clemson trailed early to Charleston Southern. Cade Klubnik threw an abysmal pick six, and it looked like, oh my gosh, what is going on in Death Valley? They come out in the second half. They score 28 in the third, 14 in the fourth, all unanswered by Charleston Southern. Cade Klubnik ends up having a decent stat line, 315, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. Any concerns about Clemson 2 games into the season that we haven't already addressed? Like, do we feel like they actually might be worse than we even thought after the Duke game?
No, they came back and took care of business today. I'm not really that worried about the slow start. We saw slow starts all around the country today. Weather was weird. I'm not that worried about it. Cade Klubnik actually looked really, really good after that pick six that you're talking about. So I think I actually walked away more encouraged about Clemson after this game than I was, especially in the middle of that debacle.
Yeah, this game was a net negative for me. They start slow, they finish strong. It's Charleston Southern. You're supposed to beat them 66-17. So you're just supposed to do it in a slightly different order than they did. You're supposed to get up like 35-7, and then you let up a touchdown because you put in all your backups or something, and that's not what happened. So net negative for me. They're still a team that got beat pretty bad by Duke. So we'll wait and see what happens. So they play another good team that's worth anything.
Despite 314 yards and 3 touchdowns from AJ Swan, Wake Forest knocks off Vanderbilt at home
That was a fun
36-20.
game. Fun
Tough.
back and forth game.
Yeah, tough look for the SEC once again. Boston College holds off noted powerhouse Holy Cross to win by 3. Trey, you had a little bit of interest in this game. James Madison knocks off Virginia 36-35. Care to comment on that final score?
Well, we almost had a Disney movie, and we didn't have a Disney movie, but it didn't work out for me either way. That's all I'll say about that.
Syracuse improves to 2-0. They blow out Western Michigan. And guys, once again, we're asking the question, is Syracuse good?
Our favorite game show. I love it.
No.
Back again.
Garrett Schrader almost has 300 yards through the air and a score. We've talked about a couple of group of 5 games, SMU. We talked about Tulane. Is it time to panic about UTSA? They only beat Texas State 20-13. Frank Harris has literally no protection. I mean, he would be as well protected if the 3 of us were blocking for him, because that kid is stitched together with baling wire and duct tape right now. He leads a gutsy performance. They score in all 4 quarters, but only 20 points. It's another slow offensive showing for UTSA. The defense stepped up this week, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe last year was kind of a one-off thing, if we're going to have a little bit of a slump here in 2023 for Jeff Traylor and the boys.
Yeah, sure is looking that way. I'm not ready to write him off completely yet. It's going to be a long season in the American if they can't figure that out, though.
Yeah, they still got the talent on the roster, but you do have to start asking the question.
Liberty beats New Mexico State. I think the week 0 hype for the Aggies has died off. That might be the last you hear of New Mexico State for a little bit. Air Force beats Sam Houston in a game that nobody wanted to watch, 13-3.
I had some ledger interest in that game. That's
yeah, that's right. It was how much were they supposed to cover by?
13.5. They almost got there.
Almost.
Sam Houston for being the last FBS team to get on the scoreboard too.
I guess that's true. Oh, that's not something you want said about your football program. Listen, we've talked UConn probably more than most, and yeah, not in a good way tonight. 14 points scored against Georgia State. They lose to a bad Panthers team. Southern Illinois, shout out the FCS. They beat Northern Illinois, who we had really good Twitter engagement from Northern Illinois fans that were saying, "Oh, look at this. We're going to beat the Salukis this week. Then we're going to go into MAC play, and we're feeling good." Not the case. They lose to the folks from Carbondale this week. Marshall beats East Carolina 31-13 as well.
Gracious him. How